Hey, everybody, welcome to the Real Top Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, Nikitas Tsoukales, and I'm here to chat with some of the most interesting and inspiring entrepreneurs on the planet. We will dig into their stories, the highs, the lows, and all the fun stuff in between. If you're running a business or considering starting one, you're in the right place for real talk and great tips. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Real Top Podcast, where we meet with real top entrepreneurs from around the globe to discuss what motivates them, who inspired them, and so much more. Here's your host, Nikitas Tsoukales.
All right, today we're hanging out with Dr. Chrys Constantinou. This person isn't just a dentist. He's leading one of the top-rated and most trusted dental practices in the Metro Cleveland, Ohio area. Dr. Chrys has some pretty awesome stories and lessons to share, and I feel honored and blessed to have him on the show today. Chrys is someone I've known for, I think, going on 30 plus years since we were little kids. And it's just fun hanging out with him. And I'm super happy you're here. So Dr. Chrys Constantinou, Chrys, what's up, man?
Yeah.
Thanks for jumping into this with me. I'm going to start with, if you could share some insights into your early life, like what initially drew you into dentistry?
Well, to be honest, I never really envisioned myself as a dentist. I had family that was in healthcare, so I thought I wanted to do something in healthcare. And I was an EMT in college. I always liked working with my hands. So as I got into that realm of medical college admission tests and stuff, I saw like there was a dental admission test. And what was kind of neat or intriguing to me about it is there was like a visual perception section of the test. And it got me thinking that, hey, that's something that's kind of up my alley. So I had never really thought about it as a career because I always hated going to the dentist, I think, like most people. But the more I looked into it, the more I saw there was a science and an art and a technique behind it. So it was fascinating.
How far along were you in your education by then? Was this when you had already finished your bachelor's? Like how did that happen? Take us through a timeline.
Sure. In undergrad, that's when I started looking at applying to medical schools and dental schools and starting getting interested in the tests, that the admissions tests that you needed to take, and the prerequisites were the same for medical schools they were for dental. And interestingly, I've two older brothers. They're quite a bit older than me, and they were both in medical school, and they had both told me don't do medicine. So I think they had been around the block and seen, hey, there's other options and so on. You can be in healthcare and still be your own boss. I think that was one of the messages they got across was dentistry is still an area of healthcare that you can be your own boss and not necessarily be as beholden to the big corporations like the hospitals.
What were some of you own your own practice. It's one thing to be a dentist. It's another thing to own a dental practice. Mm-hmm. Were there some people around you when you were younger that sort of inspired you to take the entrepreneurial role versus just working at an office? Like, how did that happen?
Honestly, not when I was younger. When I was younger, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I figured I would get a job somewhere, I would work, I would come home, and that would be it. It was after I got out of dental school and started working for other people, and I saw, what are they doing differently? So I had a couple of examples as a dentist working out in the world of other dentists who were doing the clinical dentistry and enjoying that aspect of it, but also running things on the side. There was a whole realm of running the practice and owning the real estate and that kind of thing. So that got me thinking and just asking questions, basically.
Those people that sort of inspired you, call it that model, are they? Would you consider them mentors? And if so, do you sort of keep in contact with them, or were they just more of an example that you could go off of and inspire you?
Well, so when I bought my own practice, I realized I didn't have any of that business acumen. So I did ask other dentists in the area, the other successful specialists. There were a couple in the area that both had the same advisor, and he wasn't cheap at first, so it was a hard pill to swallow. But I realized that it was essentially a tuition for an education in business management. So I still keep in touch with him, and he was a big inspiration, and he was always giving me books to read and inspirational quotes and things like that. We did one-on-one training, we did staff training, so it helped build the culture a bit and round out the gaps in my knowledge.
And there seems to be a common theme, and I have some clients ask me this, like, what's the common theme between those that are successful and not, of the clients that I've observed?
Mhm.
And there's one common theme, and it's always coaching and consultancy, like
Mhm.
paying to bypass learning everything by screwing it up and being like, oh, I should have done this a different way,
Mhm.
and having, or sort of bypassing the ego, like I know everything and I can do it all. So it's interesting to see every single person I've spoken to. I think we're batting 1,000 on that question. When I asked that, that seems to be the common theme.
Mhm.
You know, going into the actual art and the science of dentistry and how you want to provide quality services. Reflecting on the days of when you were still in dental school. What were some of the key experiences, during dental school that maybe shaped your approach to dentistry and maybe early on in your career?
Well, I noticed right off the bat that there were classmates that had a touch. Some people are more artistic than others. What might seem simple to draw for someone freehand, like a picture of a horse, for me it would it would look cartoonish and very childish. But I did realize that. So initially that was a little intimidating, but what I understood over time was that you have natural talent and then you have hard work, and hard work can come very close to, if not fully replacing talent. Working hard is actually a skill, being able to put your head down and practice on something. So for example, we uh, first learned how to make temporary crowns in the simulation lab, and it's basically working with a piece of acrylic and trying to shape it into a tooth. And it's a lot harder than you might think. And like I said, some students were able to get it right away and make something look really beautiful from the get go, but others, like myself, kind of had to grind at it and figure it out. And that's okay. You can still reach an excellent skill level by working hard for it. Um, but so that's to say, I'm not a naturally gifted artist, but what I lack in natural talent, I've always been willing to put in the hard work for.
I'm always curious when I speak to someone that's in a business that relies on a high aptitude for a skill, right? And people have to trust you with their bodies, with their mouth, with their smile. And at the same time, you're also running a business. There's an entrepreneurial side to what you're doing. How much of your call it your week, okay? Because I'm sure days vary, but how much of your week is spent being a business owner versus being a dentist? Um,
Uh-huh.
and where would you like it to be?
Well, I think I found a good balance now. You guys have helped me launch another practice or absorb and expand another practice. So there's two practices that I'm an owner of now. So my clinical time has come down to about 2 days a week of actual working on patients' mouths, let's say. And the business aspect of it has come down to like 9 days a week.
Wow.
So you're always
Sounds
on.
about right.
As a business owner, there's no, even on vacation, I always have my laptop and my phone. There's always some fire you have to put out or some, mini crisis you have to solve. So, but I do like that balance because if I'm not busy, if I'm not doing something active, I'm bored. So I like always having something going on, and I'm always thinking about the next step 2, step 3, step 4.
I mean, right now, and actually, I'm curious, what brought you to, and for those of you that don't know Dr. Chrys, he's a native of Massachusetts, where I'm from, and we grew up together in the Brockton Orthodox Church. But what brought you out to Ohio? I mean, it's a pretty big trek. What's the story?
Yeah. Yeah, if you told me in 2007, or let's say 2006, that I'd be living in the middle of Ohio, I would have laughed at you. But I did happen to meet the love of my life, and she was a native of Ohio. She was in medical school in Ohio at the time, and it was an online romance uh,
Uh,
that at that time was still unusual, still very new. 2006. People kind of looked askance at, you met someone online, and uh, but anyway, you find love in strange places, and we've been together ever since, and we have 3 kids here, and so the roots are Ohio. I'm born and bred in Boston, but roots are firmly entrenched in Ohio now.
Firmly entrenched in Ohio. Now you
Yeah.
have these two other babies, which are your businesses.
Yeah.
Share your journey. Establishing practice number one, and I assume Westlake. I mean, I know Avon was number two, but was Westlake number one? And if so, when
Yes.
did you start the practice?
So I bought the practice in late 2013, and it was a small 3-op practice, kind of run down, dated equipment, that kind of thing. So I came in with a newer skill set. I was placing dental implants, and I brought in a 3D CAD CAM and milling technology, which brought in a lot of efficiencies and took a lot of the pain out of going to the dentist, essentially, 3D imaging. So I brought in a lot of new skills and new technologies, and just from me being there, and I think the vigor of a new owner, we tried every type of marketing there was. And slowly but surely, the practice started to grow, and we grew out of that little space. And I eventually bought, renovated, and moved into the office that we're in now.
Can you take us through the effects of and we see this actually where people want to promote and advertise something, right? And then we find is in certain cases we can't help them because the deliverable has no virality. Like the quality isn't there. And as a result, there's no virality in what they do. The business has zero growth organically. So when you promote a business that has zero growth organically, it's actually very difficult because it's just too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Take me through those first years and how the importance of care and communication and service, and just how people felt after they left your office, how that contributed to your business growing organically before any of the fancy Google stuff and the promos and any of that, and how important was that, and could you identify it, and did you measure it? I'm throwing a lot of questions at you at once, by the way. Answer the first one.
Yeah, no, I get what you're getting at. When I first started the practice, I started to notice more dental marketing. It's one of those concepts where when you're thinking about buying an Acura, all of a sudden you see Acuras everywhere. So as I started thinking about marketing, I started noticing that, hey, once in a while I get a flyer in the mail from a dentist with a coupon. Should I be doing that? What is that? How do they do that? So I looked into it, and it's every door direct mailer, and you can buy bulk mailings by zip code. So you don't need to know someone's address. You can just say, I want these segments targeted. And then you weigh your mailers and you bring it to the post office, and there's a certain way to bundle it. So I tried that. Didn't have the greatest effect. You're kind of shooting in the dark and hoping something lands. I tried doing informational sessions. So doing at the library or the rec center, renting out a room and putting up flyers everywhere saying, hey, we're going to do a presentation on dental implants, and what does this mean for you? And are you a candidate? Wow. And we had like a spread of, appetizers and everything. I think like 3 people came, but two of those people that came became patients and have been patients ever since. So I can't say that it didn't work.
It worked.
But it didn't work in the way that I was thinking. Oh, there's going to be a room full of people and I'm going to get my word out. What ended up being the most effective, you mentioned the organic growth, was patients came in, just treating them really well. Treat them like you would want to treat a family member, or how you would want to be treated. Don't keep them waiting too long. Explain everything. I would sit in the room and we'd chat about, it was easier at the beginning when I wasn't as busy, but I could sit in the room and chat with them for 10, 15, 20 minutes about their lives, things outside of dentistry. And it became a word of mouth thing. That was probably the biggest way that we grew initially.
I sometimes think the world would be better off. I think it would be a fun experiment if the government just for 1 year said, hey, no marketing and advertising is allowed in any business.
Yeah.
And no signs on doors, no nothing. And then, the only thing that matters is service and care. And so many all the best business owners I've met started their businesses just like that. Mm-hmm. Phase 1 was great care, great product, a rapport, which you mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. It's so important to spend time with someone instead of just being an order taker. At the end of the day, so many of us are selling what could be perceived as kind of a commoditized thing. there's maybe another dentist or another marketer, what separates us from the next guy. A lot of times it really is just that magic of rapport when they're sitting in the chair.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's phenomenal. In terms of retaining patients, okay, and not having them go somewhere else, what are some practices you've put in place, practical things you've done to stay top of mind with those patients?
Sure. We do silly little things like, hey, it's their birthday, you get a little cup with a Starbucks gift card in there, and like a mug or something like that. Little things like that, but also, when they're in the office, we try to make the experience from front to back as smooth and seamless as possible. So, they're welcomed into the reception area. There's always a coffee bar, and try to have some relaxing music playing, or the TV showing nature scenes or something like that. And then when I always tell the staff, when you bring them back, introduce yourself, say who you are. Hey, I'm bringing you back to see your hygienist today, and making sure that they're seen promptly, taken care of well, and then checked out, and their insurance is verified properly. As few stumbling blocks as possible, because it's already not a lot of fun to go to the dentist. So we try to take away as many of the pain points as possible and just make it as smooth as we can.
I've never fully understood why people have such an issue going to the dentist. Oddly enough, I enjoy going to the dentist. I've had major surgery in my mouth. I'm completely desensitized to all the Novocaine. I think it's a great time. And dentists are always great to speak with. I mean, talking to you is always fun. I don't understand the issue, but we'll leave that for another day. I want to go back to your entrepreneurial journey a little bit, because maybe you can take us through some, you're speaking to some younger dentists right now that are maybe looking to start their own practice. And, sometimes it's not the tips we give people. It's like showing people how to avoid catastrophes. What were some particularly challenging things about scaling this business that maybe you weren't unaware of, that maybe we can share with some of these younger dental entrepreneurs that they can avoid? Maybe you can take us through some of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it may sound trite, but believing in yourself, you really have to have a vision of what you want. You have to go through all the steps of achieving a goal, have a vision, write it down. You actualize your goal. If you actually put it down on a piece of paper, what are the steps it's going to take to get there? How do you keep yourself accountable? But what I mean about believing yourself is not taking no for an answer. In short, I had multiple business plans to set up. When I bought that practice, there's no guarantee that when you're looking at a practice, you're gonna get it. The seller may decide to not sell, or they may play around with the price a little. So I had a plan A, which was starting a practice from scratch. Plan B was buying this practice. Plan C was working in with another dentist. So I spent a lot of time networking as much as possible, talking to dentists, talking to the lab techs who know all the good dentists in the area. I was on the phone constantly. I had loans prepped. I had documents sent out of all my financials to 3 different banks. One bank said no. The other bank said I didn't have any collateral really to speak of.
That old
there were
thing.
local banks that were more keen on lending to small businesses. You can look at Small Business Administration loans. Those are a little more forgiving to people who are just starting out. But the idea is you have to have multiple plans in action, and believe in your vision so much that you're not going to let one no or one stumbling block get in your way. It's just on to the next thing.
When you say believe in your vision, is there any part of, do you naturally did you just wake up one day and just, hey, these are my goals, and I'm just, and I already just believe that this is going to happen? Or did you need to do some convincing to yourself? Like, do you have to sort of sell to your own mind that, hey, I'm on board for that? Like, how does that happen in your mind?
I mean, I think if you talk to anyone who's had some success and they tell you they didn't ever have doubt, they're lying to you. So there is, every morning you do have to kind of wake up and sometimes convince yourself that this is what you want and this is what you're doing. If it were easy, everyone would do it. So you do have to have that vision in your head and think about it every day. And I would often have like 3 goals written down by the nightstand. So I wake up and look at those 3 things written down there. What am I trying to achieve today? And puts it in some perspective. At that time in 2013, I had a young daughter and my middle son had just been born. So there was all that stress at home too. But you have to use every challenge is an opportunity, as one of the things my mentor would say. He never let me call them problems. He always said they're opportunities. So whenever I felt especially tired or especially stressed out, or how am I going to make all this happen? I'm not spending enough time with the kids. I realized that, hey, this is why I'm doing it. Is so I have a little bit more freedom. I have more say in what I do and when I do it.
That's phenomenal. Let's not call these things problems. Let's call them opportunities. The fact that you were able to reframe those things is phenomenal. And of the, looking over at the nightstand and seeing those 3 goals, when did you start that habit? Or is that something you always did as a kid, or is it something your mentors had you adopt?
No, I didn't do it as a kid. You may remember me as a kid. I was a little more flighty, and my attention was kind of in many different places at once. I got more serious as I got older, and especially in dental school, as I got out of dental school and saw like the debt. That kind of puts things in perspective. Like, hey, we gotta do something to pay off that debt and make a career and make a living. I don't remember exactly when I started writing down goals like that, but the framework around it came from the consultant. He put it in more specific detail, not just writing down the goal, but when are you going to achieve that goal? You have to set yourself a date, a timeline, and then you have to set yourself, here are 7 steps it's going to take to get there, and how am I going to hold myself accountable? You have to check on your progress every so often. So he kind of refined the concept for me a lot. But I'd say somewhere after dental school, but before I bought the practice, is when I started writing down goals and using those as motivation every morning.
If you weren't writing down those goals, how far along do you think you'd be? Or if you hadn't hired a mentor, coach, or consultant, where do you think you'd be today? I mean, let's jump in the time machine.
I mean, I learned a lot from him. I don't think I'd be nearly as far along. You mentioned it earlier. I would have made every mistake in the book in trying to figure it out. I think I would have figured it out eventually, but I would have made every mistake along the way. And even with the mentorship, I've still made a lot of mistakes. So, some things I was just too stubborn to listen to. But I think having that mentorship really accelerated my progress. If I had to quantify it, maybe 7 years, maybe 10 years.
That's insane.
Yeah, just figuring things out and knowing what to do and when to do it, and getting a thirst for something more.
Chrys, as the business grows, you're less of a doer, more of a delegator, and more of a leader. Leadership is crucial in running any successful business, never mind a successful practice. How do you foster a positive and productive work environment for your team? How do you keep people charged up? What's your secret to success there?
Yeah, that's a good question. One of the things my mentor told me, or one of the first things we talked about, was, everyone wants to be appreciated. Every human being instinctively wants to be, needed and appreciated. So that's the patients or your clients if you're in a different type of business. And it's also the people that you work with, your teammates. So I've always tried to show them that appreciation with, regular outings. Every quarter we do something really fun, throw a party, or, big dinner out, going bowling, or we have a pool party here at my house every summer. And then those are like the quarterly goals. And then maybe every 18 to 24 months, we plan something really big. Like actually in a couple of weeks, we're going to Mexico, we're going to Cancun. So we set up a goal of, hey, where are we going to go? When are we going to go? And every month, let's set aside some portion of your bonus and I will match it. So I pay 50% essentially of this big trip. And it's a big team building thing because everyone's talking about it for 12 months in a row or 18 months in a row, and kind of hyping about it. And then as far as the business itself goes, there are a lot of places will have a bonus structure or profit sharing or something like that. I do something very similar, and I make it very transparent. I say, here's what labor costs us, and anything above that, is more profit. So we'll help share in that piece of pie above that basic amount of money, or the BAM. So everyone knows the goal that we're working for in a given month. And I always stress it's not about pushing treatment that's not necessary. There's plenty of necessary treatment out there that in any other office might just not get followed up on. They never called the patient back. Or they never called the lab to check if the case was back, or the treatment plan was never sent out correctly, or the insurance was never verified correctly. I think if you take away all those tiny little errors, they add up to something huge, and it means that the office is just busier, our schedule is fuller, and it translates into the productivity of the office. And that's a transparent number that everyone sees. Everyone knows that we hit this certain number, and they're going to see some portion of it in their paycheck after that. So it's a really strong motivator, and that is a whole system that came from my consultant too. So I owe that.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah,
that's phenomenal. I have, I know you're really busy, so I have two questions left, and,
sure.
and one of them is one of my more favorite questions. It's about stress. Dentistry, running, launching, maintaining, growing any business is call it a stressful profession. Entrepreneurship is. How do you manage stress and maintain a work-life balance? Because you are a father, you are a husband, and you have a lot of other things going on. What's your secret, or what are some tips, some practical tips and advice you could give to some of the younger practice owners that they could maybe adopt in their life?
Well, it depends on how much you want to juggle, and if you want to have any hobbies or not.
Is it just that you're just so absolutely, your work ethic is so insane that you just power through everything because you're this super Greek god dentist and you could just do it all? Or
no, I wouldn't flatter myself so much to say that, but I do enjoy it, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more you do something and you see that it's working, the more the reward center in your brain lights up. So to see something working and the gears turning, and now all of a sudden I have this opportunity to buy the real estate that's holding the dental office. And then, it also happens to be a multi-tenant building. So now I have tenants, and it helps you grow and never be bored and always do something. So, I don't play a lot of video games. I don't gamble or anything. I don't have a lot of vices, but I do kind of maybe work too much. But I enjoy it. So if that's something that's you're passionate about, and or you can find other passions in what you're doing, then as long as you're having fun and you're enjoying it, then it doesn't seem like work as much.
I love that. I agree 100% with what you're saying. I feel the same way, and I think that's sound advice. If you enjoy what you're doing and you're getting these wins, when you get the dopamine hits and the serotonin, or whatever medical terms, I'm not qualified enough to talk about it. You seem to enjoy work so much. When you're winning, work is great. It's not very stressful. So I have one last question, and then we'll let you go. Looking back, again, you're talking to the younger Dr. Chrys Constantinou, or even some of these younger entrepreneurs starting up, generally speaking, or maybe just in dentistry specifically. Is there anything you would have done differently in your business or professional journey?
One of the things I mentioned, I didn't quite listen to my consultant, is that the really flashy, fancy dental chair that costs $30,000 isn't necessarily that much better than the one that costs $15,000. And I had a gluttony for the nicest equipment, and it means I have a very nice office, but probably the same amount of productivity and quality could be delivered. Not probably, certainly the same kind of quality could have been delivered with less flashy equipment. So I guess it's just focus on the important things, which is, in my business, is focusing on patient communication and care, and that their overall experience is good, and then everything else will follow. So I think my advice would be to a young dentist is I don't care if you're in a 2-room hut in the middle of nowhere. If you're able to deliver quality care, you'll have a line out the door of people willing to see you. So focus on the important things, and the rest will follow. And don't get tripped up so easily on getting the most flashy and the most expensive things in the dental toys. It's not necessarily necessary for you.
Well, this is sound advice. Dr. Chrys, thank you so much for being a friend, for being a client, and for willing to deal with me for the last half hour. This has been a lot of fun, and I'm really excited to share this with all of you listeners and all of you watchers. Dr. Chrys just gave us some pretty amazing advice, and I think I've learned a lot. So selfishly, thank you so much.
Hey, thank you. Had fun.
I hope you guys enjoyed Cancun, and we'll see you later, man.
All right. Take care. See you around.